Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast. Today I have Jake Bertelsen.
It's great to be here, man. Thanks so much for having me out at your house. This place is incredible. I really appreciate you having us out here and doing a podcast with me. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
It's been some time to get you up here to, come up and hang out with us and talk about some life and some things and some opportunities. So welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah. So you first.
So we're going to be doing a shirt for you, like we talked about, for our clothing company, XX. And the main goal behind it is kind of trying to inspire some people to go after their dreams. Like, there's so many people out there that don't feel like they're ever going to be able to achieve the things that they actually want to achieve. And you're like one of those people who's kind of, I would say, like almost like a cultural icon, where like in the knife world, there's so many people that know who you are, and you didn't start out that way. Like, you weren't this person that was super well known in the knife world in the beginning of all of it. And so, like, if you could go back and give some advice to like you when you were starting out, or like the people who are in that same realm that you were in, where they have this passion but they're not actually doing it yet, like, what advice would you give them?
It's like anything else. I mean, anything that you want to achieve, you really got to want to go after it. I talk to a lot of youth nowadays, and, even there once was a time, even within the confines of Microtech, where, we've had a lot of different talent come from a lot of different industry. Nobody comes in and says, hey, I'm from the knife industry, or I ground blades or made knives or any of that stuff. So, we can manifest that talent just based on the fact that we could identify, just the simple work ethic. It's in anything that you do. And my advice to most folks is, it doesn't matter really what trade you come from or what job you had last. I think it's just like anything else. As you start out as a young age, regardless of the task at hand that you're taught or the trade that you're picking up, it may not be the last job that you ever have. It's like anything else. Just do it like you fucking own it. Yeah, I mean, did I start out making knives? No, I was 14 years old and I worked every freaking job that I could, but I owned that job 1,000%.
Nice.
And, whether it was planting tomatoes or freaking working a kitchen or frying chicken or flipping burgers, I was the best at it. I knew it wouldn't be the last position I would ever have, but I took that mentality to my next position. And I'd say that for anybody, just own the work that you do. It doesn't matter. When you get up in the morning, own it. When you get out of bed, you own it. You make your bed. Let that be the first task for your day, but own it. And you could take that to wherever you're going to next, whether it was schooling or whether it was, folks I knew that studied music or anything. Just, hey, man, if you're sweeping the deck, do it with some passion. Because once you get in that mindset, I'm telling you, from that point forward, you could do anything. Because a lot of people, I always hear the people, man, I can't do this. I can't do this. Or I hear a lot of people, I'll never be able to afford that. Keep talking like that and you never will. So it's just, I think a lot of it's a mindset. Now, granted, I understand there's some things that I probably couldn't do at my age, or I know what I'm good at, so, I don't want to get, inside my head to say, could I, be that same guy to bench 500 pounds? Probably likely for my size, that's not going to happen. But I know where my limits are. I mean, just even from the musician standpoint, okay, I've dabbled. I'm not a musician, but I love to play drums. I know I'm as good as I'm ever going to be, but I'm good enough for me. And but I do that sort of thing for fun. But that's most of the advice I give a lot of people today is, regardless of what you do, you have to live it and you have to breathe it like you're breathing air, man. You have to be able to stick your head like if I was drowning you in a pool and you're trying to escape and I'm trying to drown you, you got to want to do what you're doing like that same amount of passion of living, so, and I got to say, even for a young man in my time, you often sometimes think, is this as good as it gets for me? It's hard to say, but you got to be able to just put that effort forward, regardless of what you're doing at the time. I hear a lot of people, I hate my job. Oh my God. I get it. You hate it, move on. But while you're there, own it.
Yeah. No, that's huge. So when you were starting out, what did you end up doing? Like, what were your first steps when you started getting into knife making and you were trying to like follow this passion that you had?
I'm going to say, I can't say that that it was a lot more difficult for me because of the times, but think about it today. If I said, hey, Jake, man, I'm going to have you grind a blade. I could teach you how to do it, or you can maybe Google about 20 different tutorials on YouTube on how to grind a blade. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, you had to, network. You had to go to shows. You had to pick up magazines. There was no freaking internet. There was no, YouTube. There was no FaceTime. There was no phones. I mean, what I mean by phones is handhelds. I mean, if you had a phone, it was one of the ones that, either was dial or whatever else. You had to call people. So you had to figure some things out. And a lot of that is just, where do you go? I mean, think about 1990, and go, okay, I'm going to start making knives. Where do you start?
And so you went out to conventions and you networked with people.
Well, the thing about it is I think what became first prior to that is I think I was into knives, but I think my interest was a little bit stronger in firearms. Okay. So firearms and machine tools. Like I remember as a kid, remembering my mom take me at a very young age. She dated a guy that worked at Eastman Kodak, and he was one of the tool room guys. And it was a short-lived relationship, but what I remember specifically about that is going into that fucking tool room and seeing mills and lathes, and these guys were cutting metal. And I was infatuated, from that moment forward, going, holy shit, these guys are cutting metal. And it's just like, wow, okay, well, if they can cut metal, I mean, if you can cut metal, you can do anything, right?
Totally.
And that's how it was. I remember just spending an evening, I was into like, you'd go to the flea market, find like the cheap, throwing stars and chucka sticks and shit like that. And I remember going to this machine shop, and he helped me make a throwing star, and we made it there at that machine shop. And I'll never forget that. I made that. He helped me make that. And it was just like, so that embedded in my memory. It's just like, wow. I mean, at the time, I just did whatever jobs I had. I was just a kid still going to school. Yeah. But that was in the back of my head. It's just like, wow, I wish I could learn how to do this sort of work. So it was always in the background there. So that's part of my pursuit as a young person. I mean, the folks that raised me did construction work. So I'll never take that back as a trade, even though it was extremely hard work. We came from construction workers, sheetrock framing, that sort of thing. And again, we did it as we owned it, because it was all piecework. It wasn't by the hour. Yeah. So, but from a hobby standpoint, always appreciated pocket knives, always appreciated firearms. I was always too young to be, couldn't own a gun, so I was always gravitated towards people who could. So as that developed a little bit sooner on, and when I left home, I started dabbling a little bit more into firearms refinishing and gunsmithing tasks, and a couple gunsmiths took me underneath their wing, showed me some tricks. I had to have a very good knack at it. Started, hanging out at machine shops, where I got some side-end jobs, and started to learn, from a couple tool makers, and started to manifest my skill over time. Nice. And it came to my advantage because I began to figure out I can make things for myself. Yeah. And I actually had a little bit more time than money. Okay. But I did it with a little bit of a passion. But that was the spark, that I still enjoy it today. I have often said, running a company is a very difficult thing to do. And anybody running an organization, doesn't matter the size, is always a task at hand. It can consume you if you're not careful. And that would be another thing that I would say is, for anybody young, my younger version of myself, would it be any level of different success if I would have just taken one more day, or just to take a day off to spend more time with family? Trust me, the work will never escape you. It doesn't leave. The fucking shoe elves don't come at night and finish the work while you're asleep. Yeah. The work is true to you. It'll always be there, but you could work yourself to death. And I fear that for a lot of entrepreneurs today. They consume their lives. They miss out on the simpler things. That would be the only thing I would tell my younger self. Yeah, totally. Just work it hard. Burn it like you own it. Take just a little bit of time. Take that little bit of time. Those, when you're on your deathbed, dude, think about it that way. You're having your last 5 minutes of breath on this earth. You think you're going to worry about the work that you, Jesus Christ, I could have done more work, or could have done whatever else. Now you're going to be thinking about all the memories that you've shared with your family and your children and loved ones. That's what you're going to be thinking about. So you think about the last 5 minutes you breathe in on this earth, that'll really tell your heart where you need to be. The work will always be there. Yeah. And that's the only thing that I have just a slight regret is I would cut out on vacations early to get back to the shop. I would work really stupid late and work weekends, nights, everything else. And sometimes it's required to be done, but that's the only thing. Embrace the moment. Don't become complacent, but embrace that time. You'll never get it back. It's the most precious resource that you have.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely struggle with that one myself. That's like over the last year, we've been trying to reorchestrate things. Like I was talking to you about last night, we got 2 older kids that ended up going out of the house. And then it really wasn't until I got to see like my oldest son walking down the aisle, like to go graduate.
That's awesome.
And then it like hit me. I was like, no way, like he's out of the house. I don't get that time back. And I'd worked really, really hard to kind of try and instill good morals and good ethics and make him a hard worker. And I feel like I did a good job with all that stuff. But then when it came to the me time, that like selfish part of raising them, where you get to go have fun with them and you get to really enjoy having the kids and stuff, I didn't make enough time for that. And so then I ended up talking to Kelly and I was like, we got to change everything, like everything in our life, because my second oldest was going to be out of the house the next year. And then I only had like 8 years left with my youngest and only a few years left with my second oldest. And I'm like, I want to enjoy him more. I want to spend more time with them. But I think you're right. Like it's super hard when you get in there and you actually go for it. I'm normally really cautious about telling people to like throttle back, because I think overall most people could use a little bit more work ethic and a little bit more going for it, a little bit less like time on the phone.
Well, we're slave to our own devices, dude. I mean, it's just like that. But you're right. And today's day and age is different. I'll say that, a 30-year gap of where we are today versus where we were, in any generation per se. But you're right. It's you do have to have that discipline as a mentor to make sure that you don't overstep. The difference is saying, hey, there's an equilibrium between spending your time, where your heart really chooses it to be, and then versus, the passion of the work and the career that you have. So because you don't want to teach complacency, because sometimes it could be misconstrued in that sense. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think you're right. Like finding that balance, I think, is always one of the hardest things. And you always hear that question come up where it's like, oh, how do you find that balance between like work and family? And I feel like you got to make it happen. You got to figure out like the honest part inside of all of us knows like, okay, I should be spending at least this much time with my family. And then it's like, well, are you doing it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's hard because hindsight's 20/20 on everything else. It's just like, a lot of people ask me, why do you guys go nuts? Like fucking, 2 weeks before a show. I mean, how do you condense your time? How do you plan? We could strategically plan some of these things. But yes, we condense some of the things, not because we're complacent. It's just that we have so many other things we got to do prior to getting to a show. Yeah. And then, yes, we condense it towards the rear end of a show, and then we're finding ourselves working, all kinds of kooky hours and stuff like that. But I try to taper some of that back because, it's hard on everybody. It's hard on the people around you. It's hard on your body. It's hard on your mind and soul and everything else. But it's hard. I think a lot of it has to do, with time management. How you spend your time. There could be some times where I was like, man, I know I got to get that done. Little procrastination, and it's just I also got to be in my zone too to do my work. There's a really big difference. Again, if all I had to do is just run an organization, that would be fine. But that would be dull to me to a certain extent. Because I still enjoy making the knives, and I still enjoy the craft. So I got to find that happy medium to do both. And plus on top of that, it's still practicing my craft. I'm not at a point where I consider myself to be some contest level freaking knife maker. I'm still trying to achieve that. And by doing that, the only way to get that done is to do the work. But I find those happy, those moments at my part of my career where I could spend that time, and I really enjoy it. It's actually an escape for me. But I have to find that time because it's almost impossible for me to do it during a business hour because I'm running a company and everybody's dependent. And that's what I love about my staff is, and that's another thing I was going to say is, for a younger self is, if you had to go back, I mean, what makes Microtech or any business successful? It's the people you surround yourself with. There once was a Tony Marfione that would fucking throw hammers through walls and yell and get upset and freaking leave the shop steaming with, shit coming out of my ears. And, it doesn't have to be that way. If you surround yourself with people that make you that agitated, it's very simple. Just let them go. They don't have to work there, and, you only agitate yourself even further. We've had the discipline of being able to, create a pretty decent working environment. Not everybody fits. I'm not going to, candy coat some shit. We've had some real doofuses come into our organization, but, we've given them a college try. You got to give some people a chance. Some people, got a good angle, and they're like, even if they don't have the experience, you got to give them a shot. If they don't manifest their skills, they don't. Move them somewhere else or get rid of them. Don't have somebody stay there and then before you know it, they're like, man, I hate my freaking job. The minute they say that, you got all kinds of other underlying issues. But, so that's a thing from an entrepreneurial standpoint. If you do have to take on help, just surround yourself with the people that you can mesh with. Just like doing collaboration work.
Yeah.
There once was a time where I collaborated, with other knife makers just because the industry said, you should maybe collaborate with this guy. But Jesus Christ, don't bring him to your fucking house for dinner. They'll rob you blind or worse.
Yeah.
Or worse. So now I just get into that mentality. I like to meet people first. If I mesh with them, I got a kind of a pretty good sense of character.
Yeah.
But I like to collaborate with people that have similar synergies. So again, if I had to talk to anybody in today's day and age, be careful of the cliques. Be careful of the people you bring within your inner circle.
Yeah.
Because your inner circle needs to stay tight. You'll know because it's usually the people that'll be with you no matter what. People that won't turn your back on you no matter who you are, accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
Not for who you perceive yourself to be. So that's a big piece of advice. I'd say that anybody now in today's day and age, looking to do something to excel from the sense of, whether it be artists or whatever. I mean, you could be a one-man band all your life, but still you have to surround your circles carefully, very carefully.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So anybody I collaborate with, if I couldn't have you here and I couldn't cook for you or invite you into my home, then it's likely we wouldn't do a collaboration at all. So I base it on that. If you can, have people that you could trust in your own home with your family, be careful because there's vampires out there, even worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely that you told me that on the phone when we talked a while ago.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, man, the one piece of advice I have for you is don't do any collaborations with anybody that you wouldn't invite into your own home and sit down and have dinner with. And it's so funny. There's been a bunch of different things that have happened since then. And it's your voice is in the back of my head, kind of echoing, saying that. I'm like, I don't think I'd invite him into my house. And it's weird because it's actually, I feel like a really good line to draw, right? Where so many times you're like, I feel like I should do this for the money or for the success of the business or whatever. But then when you draw that line, does this actually fit with me well? Is this somebody that I would bring into my house and have dinner with? Then it totally changes everything. You're like, oh, hell no. And I think if more people kind of used a filter like that, is this really good? Is this true? And then that would you bring them into your home is a great filter for that because it'll help you say no.
Exactly.
When you should say no.
When you should say no. Exactly right. So that's another thing I was going to say. When you have to work with somebody from an aspect of a financial gain, there's good strategic partnerships that you can mend. And that's as far as it goes. But when you collaborate on a level where it's in your face, close, up in front, and everything else, it's a little bit different. But I get it, because we do some collaborations with people that, maybe we do collaborations, and then we do strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships are good. They're signed on the dotted line. Everybody has their expectations in writing, and it makes it really good. And it's a fruitful way to approach.
Yeah.
But do we do our due diligence? Worse than people could ever imagine. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I encourage you or anybody else to do the same thing. Do your due diligence. I don't care if you're fucking dating. I don't care if it's friends, people that you meet. Do a little due diligence. It ain't going to hurt. Yeah. It's not a matter of snooping. I'm not saying go through their freaking panty drawer, but do your due diligence on the people you bring within your circle. I don't care if it's strategic partnerships or collaborations,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super good advice.
No.
So, okay, when you started out making these knives, you got to go into these different machine shops, you worked with some people, then you started doing your own thing. How did it go from that to actually owning your own business?
Well, very, very first off, like I said, Susan and I met at a very, very early age. We met a little bit, I think we're both about 16 years old.
Okay.
I was born in Florida. Of course, she was born in Olean, New York, but her family relocated to Newport Richey, Florida very, very early on, from what I understand. So I left home, got on a bus, $50 in my pocket, whatever, and just moved back down to Florida and winged it. I managed to be, blessed and enough to be able to make my way to be able to, again, connect with people that I can get within my inner circle that you know, like the guy that I lived with, I partnered with just to live at his place. You know, I met him at a fucking video arcade place. Just happened to say, hey man, you seem cool. You seem like you're, it's like, yeah man, I don't have no place to stay. It's like, hey, you can stay at my place as long as you just keep to yourself. And it's just like, wow, all right, man, that's cool. You know, I could have just been put in a box and that would have been it, you know, from that point. But, you know, it seemed like a lot of things fell into place. No, I would never encourage, because I couldn't imagine one of my kids leaving home. I'd be broken to death. I mean, today's world is not the same, you know, even though I think things have been going on for the longest amount of time, but I couldn't imagine my 15-year-old kid walking out the door. But met Susan Young, and of course, any amount of trade that I knew how to do, that's where I said I was able to hold my own. Okay. You know, this dude's like, hey man, you could have this room, you know, and this is what I expect for rent. You know, I'll give you a couple weeks to get a job, and you do that, and you're going to pay me. Deal, dude. You know, I'll pay you, and I'll even pay you for back rent. You know, I think my first job was at a freaking Friendly's car wash in Newport Richie, and I did it like I owned it. And then I found a better job at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I made the best chicken. And even when I left, it was just like, you know, wow, you could do so much, you know, and it was doing any kind of odd jobs, and it, you know, lend into a little bit of construction work and anything I could find at the time to just make ends meet, you know, I did it. So, but the gun side just was thrilling to me. And I started refinishing guns just by going through magazines. It's like, oh my God, I could buy this moly resin stuff and I could refinish guns for a living. It's just like, cool, you know, money order, here we go. And I, you know, started working for a couple of local gun shops for finishing guns. And before you know it, they're like, hey man, you're some kind of freak, man. Hey, why don't you come in and work here part-time? And then, you know, knives and guns kind of go together. And, you know, I met Susan, very mysteriously met Susan. It's a kind of a neat, well, we'd have to have a whole nother podcast on that one. Okay. But it was neat how we met. You know, we met through mutual friends, and, you know, of course, one thing led to another, and here we go. My son Tony is born, you know, so, which was a neat dynamic for the both of us, because he's an amazing young man. But,
and you're like 17.
Yeah, when 16? Tony was born, we were 17. Susan and I got married when we were 18 in 1988, so, you know, and then before you know it, Sean was on the way.
So most people are still going to high school at that point.
Yeah, that's crazy, yeah, we had to drop out. Even though Susan and I, we both went back, you know, got our GD, and she worked very hard, great mom, and we both did everything that we could to raise these babies. And, but that was another thing, you know, it's just different kind of attitude back then. Our folks didn't support us. They gave us a little way, but they said, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of way for just a little bit, but then you're on your own. You know, I remember, you know, us getting carted over to a, you know, trailer park and saying, here you go, have a nice day. Yeah, just like that, dude. But you know what? It formed and shaped us who we were. Yeah. You know, we didn't have people to watch the kids. You know, we did it ourselves. We took shifts. We did whatever we had to do to take care of these babies. You know, I took in every other job. I didn't know about benefits. I didn't know about, you know, unemployment. I didn't know about unemployment until, you know, my first employees that I fired collected on me. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's like, unemployment, you actually get free money? Geez, where was this freaking 10 years ago? You know, there was no such thing. And, but no, I mean, the thing about it is I love the knives, love the guns, did okay. Those two kind of meshed together. Managed to surround myself with a lot of people that were a little bit better well-to-do, you know, hooking up with people at the gun shops and stuff like that. I met guys who fucking machine guns, all kinds of crazy stuff, pocket knives, and it was just like, oh my God, I didn't know such things existed. And of course, I didn't have two nickels to rub together, and I just, you know, did my spare time doing machine work and finishing guns, and maybe before you know it, it's like, man, I don't know, maybe I can make a knife of my own, just for me, you know, because I can't afford anything, but I got a little bit of time on my hands. So I started that dabble. I think it was maybe 19, I think I was 19. Okay. When I tried to make my first knife. I actually have it upstairs if you want to see it.
Oh, I totally want to see that. Yeah.
So it was never really like, oh, I'm going to start a knife company today and do all this shit. It's like, no, man, I freaking want to make a pocket knife because I can't afford this stupid Charlie Ox knife, black knife for $100, you know, back in the day. So I'll maybe make my own, you know, and then before you know it, you know, I made a kind of a prototype, caught a little bit of attention. And then before you know it, it's like I made another prototype that, you know, there's a lot of facets in between here. I know we're limited on time, but made another prototype that actually worked. I didn't grind my blade. You know, I contacted a guy named Jerry Bussey in the knife catalog. It's like, hey, bro, you know, do you think you can grind my blade? It's like, send it to me. I'll grind it. Fuck it. You know, and he ground some of my blades and sent them back. And, you know, we were off the gun thing for a little bit. I was still, you know, back and forth on that. You know, shelved the knife project. I just didn't see an end to figuring out how to do it. It's like, okay, I made a knife, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And got a solicitation to go. There was a project called Offensive Handgun back for H&K in the day, and we knew that there was a silencer contract, which I dabbled with.
Okay.
I didn't have my own license. I worked for a couple shops that did, and did submit an entry that actually got looked at by HK and invited us to Virginia to take a look.
And this was a silencer that you made for them?
It was a silencer I made. I was only like 19 years old. 19,
oh, that's
years
cool.
Old, yeah. So it was through Special Ops Shop and some of the other guys, and we got a chance to show it. And of course, my ambitions of saying, wow, we're going to get this contract were, maybe fruitful for a young man. But, the neat thing about that trip is, it got us up to HK, but it got me, I can't remember, and Reed, forgive me if I'm wrong, Reed Knight, won that contract, and I ended up going to work for Knight's Armament in Vero Beach.
Okay.
And it was the best opportunity I ever had. The guy gave me a wonderful opportunity, better than I had ever had in my life. He talked to him on the phone. He's like, hey, if you can make it to Vero Beach, I'll interview you. We went to go see him, gave me a tour of the factory. Guy gives me $1,200 cash, says, go to lunch. If you want the job, you could stay in the trailer in the back with Eric. And, I've never loaned anybody this amount of money in my entire life, not even my own kids, but there's something about you I like, which was kind of weird because he didn't like anybody. I don't even think he likes me. But nevertheless, great opportunity, and got a chance to work for a real company that paid me. If I showed up for work, I did my work, the guy got paid. I got a real check. And for me, that was a dream,
Nice.
So eventually, I had Susan and the kids come over, and we got an apartment. And I did have the little pocket knife. And of course, some of the guys that we work with were heavily into knives, and it caught some traction. And the guys were like, look, that's a really cool little micro knife. And, and we dealt with a lot of operators and stuff through Reed. Reed is the pioneer of, great gear for Special Operations Command. I mean, what I loved about Knight is it didn't matter. If he was faced with a task, everybody was in the same direction. We worked until we got it done, whether it was nights or weekends or anything else. That's what I loved about, everybody was like, Reed's such an asshole. He's so, hard. I get it now, faced with the fact that we have, a shit ton of over, I think, 170 full-time employees. I get it, why he had to be so stern. The projects we were doing were not for the commercial project, for the commercial areas and stuff. This was to go save guys' lives and save people's lives. So I get it, but anyway, loved my job there. The knife caught some traction. I wanted to do it. We even showed it to Reed. He's like, we don't make knives, but imagine if they did back in the day.
Yeah.
Imagine if Reed did his own pocket knives or own commercial silencers or own commercial rifles. I mean, they're super successful family anyway. But they were the early mentors of my life because it was the first real job I had. But anyway, the knife caught traction. Before you know it, I got called in the Knight's office, and he's like, look, I know you're making the knives, and you got to kind of pick, what you're going to be doing. He goes, sir, it's like, I don't understand. He's like, you can't serve two masters. He said, you're going to either go do this thing with your knives 100%, or you're going to continue to get your ass back to work here and continue to do it 100%. It's your choice. I chose to make knives, it's because I was already kind of into it and I wanted to try it. And it wasn't like
And so were these like out the front knives?
No, it was a little mini. It was the mini knife. It was the first knife that ended up being dubbed the UDT Mini Seal.
Okay.
And we utilized the shops in the localized areas to make the parts. And Jerry Bussey, Chris Reeves, Reese Weiland, of all freaking guys. I mean, Reese was the kind of guy, and I don't mind if I say that. He just could have been owned the knife world, but he just looked like somebody puked him up. That kind of guy.
Okay.
And Reese, if you're out there, fuck you. And I just said that. So, but love him to death, and he was a pioneer of a lot of these cool things that happened early on. If he would have just changed his shirt at least once a year. Anyway, it's funny because it's true. But anyway, so we got started making these knives. We were making them in the Pines of Vero apartments. We converted our kitchen and part of the work areas to, workshop space. And, what even got me to that is Eric and I went to a knife show. It was the Orlando Guild show. And this dude was a socialite anyway. He knew everybody. He knew everybody in the industry, knew everybody in the guns, and he's still an asshole. Eric, if you're out there, you are, but I love you still because you're a pioneer of what I've done. But, Eric introduced us to some, great guys that were like the pioneers of like Benchmade and stuff like that. So we met up with one of the big distributors and they caught wind of that knife. And the guy ended up giving me like a handwritten contract, said, if you ever build these, I'll buy 10,000 of them, and I still have it. It's on a freaking napkin, for God's sakes. And, so it was kind of like prompted along to go ahead and build these knives. And I ended up doing it. And it was very, very difficult for Susan and I. And,
so you agreed to build 10,000 of them?
I agreed to build 10,000, which was probably the biggest mistake of my life. But, because it was hard to fulfill the contracts that I signed on, especially for the money. I mean, we were struggling so bad. We just didn't charge enough for the knives.
Okay.
And so we're working in the Pinesville apartment. It's a tiny little apartment. The grinder that you've seen upstairs has got the Christmas wreath on it.
Yeah.
It's the first grinder I had. I didn't know how to sharpen the knives. And that's where I told you, I talked to Chris Reeves and he kind of mentored me over the phone, yelling at me in fucking Zulu, trying to tell me how to get my shit straight. Cause he's like, if you're never going to freaking make it in this industry, if you can't sharpen a knife. And that always stuck in my head. Yeah. He said, we'll grind your blades. We'll do your surface grinding. We'll machine your parts. But he's like, Tony, if you can't sharpen a fucking knife, you're not going to make it. Yeah. You're not going to make it. And I know so many great guys out there that have just learned just enough. They're not going to make it. They can't even sharpen their own knives. That's the essence. That's the heart. That's when a knife comes alive, an edge, whether it be a knife, a sword, a machete. I don't care what it is, a fucking, ninja cutter, whatever. That's when it becomes a knife. So, for anybody looking to get into this industry, I'm going to suggest that you figure out how to sharpen a knife first. Because if you could do that, you've got your career dicked. Because I pick up so many knives and they're like, oh, Tony Marfione, give me your advice. Give me this, give me that. Well, first off, I'm going to check the edge. If it don't have an edge, I'm going to let you know. Yeah. But that was the first thing. And Chris would not sharpen my knives. He refused. He would do everything else.
That's cool.
Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. Even my son Tony, at Heretic, Tony learned how to sharpen. Nobody puts an edge on him on the knives like he does. He's even better than me. And we got guys at the shop that are even better than me too. But he learned how to do it. Starting picking up cigarette butts when he was a kid at the factory and learned every aspect. That's why he makes a great knife maker. Nice. Same with Sean. Sean learned it from the ground up. Sean though, he's like a freaking machine because nobody grinds blades the way that he does. Nobody. And nobody has done the quantities that he's done in the lifetimes. I don't believe it. I would challenge anybody. But there's a shelf life on that. It's like anything else. How long could we really do this? My hands, I got freaking carpal tunnel in my arms and shit, and I see cross-eyed. I had to get surgery because of looking up close on a bench for a long time. Really? That's another thing I'd have to go back and tell myself, for the longest time I didn't take care of myself. I always put my work and family first. If you're a family person, you take care of yourself first so you could do so much for everyone else. So even for you, man, I see the mission that you're on and everything else. You need to be number one, bro, because if you're not number one, how are you going to provide for everybody else? Yeah. So you gotta take, and a lot of people misconstrue that, but you know what I'm talking about. Oh, definitely. You got to be able to, your mind, body, and spirit needs to be where it needs to be. If you're on a mission to help and to help create avenues and channels for people to succeed, you have to lead by example. You have to be that shining light, dude. It can't be that fucking freight train light. You need to be that beacon. And to be able to do that, you need to take care of yourself 100% on many levels.
Definitely. Thanks for that.
Yeah, man. So Microtech gets started. We get kicked out of our apartment not because we're not like paying our rent. It's because I'm out on the back porch grinding until midnight, and they're like, "What are you making back on your porch?" There's sparks and smoke, and it's like, well, I make knives, and I'm out there grinding blades and sharpening, doing whatever I got to do. And they're like, people are complaining, we're not going to renew your lease. I was like, really? So we had to go find space, and that's how we found space at 932 Oslo Road. We've got the first little roll-up bay. Okay. And here it goes. We had to start taking on space. Then before you know it, it's like we got too much to assemble. Susan can't do it all. I can't do it all.
So it was just the two of you.
It's just the two of us. And then we hired one dude named George McInerney. I miss him to death. I don't know where you are, George, but I love you, bro. You're one of the pioneers of what we've done. I wish you were still here.
Wow.
And so George worked for us for years, became the manager of Microtech down in the Bay. But I think from 2000 or actually Microtech became incorporated in 1994 of April.
Okay.
And then from that point, I think by the time we hit the hurricanes, late 2004, 2005, I think we had about 58 full-time people. And Microtech was well on its way. And the industry just came back and challenged us. They're like, because a lot of people are like, how did you come up with all this shit? A lot of it was driven by, like, the guys would look at the Mini Seal and say, that's great. Could you make one bigger?
Yeah.
You going to pay me? Dude, I'll make you whatever you want. Make one bigger with a 3-inch blade. UDT was born. Okay. The guys come back and say, hey, could you make one that shoots out the front with a charging handle like an M16? It's like, yeah, I could do that.
And the Halo.
You know? Yeah. Halo CFOs. And then the guys are like, hey man, we need some folders. You know, some SOCOM guys want some Special Operations Command, like, you know, something to replace these other things that they're using. I won't mention names. And you know, the SOCOM was born, and it's been a staple in our brand for over 25 years. And it's just continuous challenges. And I think we did a pretty decent job of, you know, a lot of people, you know, I think we did a very good job in our timeline of pioneering some really neat things. We may not have been able to deliver it entirely to the entire world and created a lot of markets for a lot of other people to feed off of, but it created a legacy for us, you know. So a lot of people, that's why, you know, podcasts like these are important, so that people can understand that there's some real blood and iron and some grit behind what we're doing. We're not robots. Yeah. You know, we don't shovel shit in a fucking machine and out come these finished knives on a conveyor like the, you know, everlasting gobstopper machine at the Willy Wonka factory. There's no such thing. I wish, but it's not that way. You know, so, you know, being able to, you know, have people understand the history about this company, how it got started and how it's going to continue to go. You know, people can motherfuck me all day. They do. They love to hate me. But, you know, look at the next, like, 3 generations of Marfiones you're going to have to deal with. So me, I'm washed up as far as my career is concerned. You know, a lot of people would say, oh my God, you're not. No, I'm living for my next generations right now. I've lived a good life. It's been humbling. I've learned a lot, and everything that I could pass on to my children and their children, I'm going to do. But anything I could do to mentor anybody that I can give back to this industry, I will. But half the time, bro, I hate to say it, most of the people, they don't want to complete their tasks. So every now and then we'll find that diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
And guess what? We just continue to hone it and hone it and hone it and see where it goes. Some of the best people within our organization come from other skill sets.
Okay.
But they have that mindset that is just impeccable. You know, they're unstoppable. You know, it is my vision, but the people of Microtech now make it what it is today and are going to drive it to the next levels. My children, their children, from the next generations on, are going to make this thing what it's going to be. You know, so that's what I hope to instill going forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a cool work ethic, and like the overall story behind it is amazing, man. I had no idea it was just the two of you guys like grinding blades together, making your first order at 10,000 and then like working your way up.
And like I said, Susan was instrumental. I'm not going to say, I mean, even though I've had to buy her out just recently, but she put up with my shit for so many years. I mean, that takes a lot of trust to go from, hey, working a great job that where we got, you know, a pay and everything was well on its way. We were happy. And she's like, you're going to go do what? You know, she could have simply just vetoed that, you know, that vision. She was even going to school for herself. I mean, she was going to school for, finally had an opportunity to go back to school to become what she wanted to do in her lifetime. Gave all that up so that we could pursue Microtech. Yeah. So, you know, it took some faith and some trust in her, but she backed me up 100%. Nice.
That's so cool having a good woman behind it. I definitely appreciate that.
100%, man. I wouldn't have been able to get this far without her.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's interesting too, looking at the whole broad picture. That was one thing I was thinking about just a couple months ago, was the idea of, you hear people over time and they're always thinking that like a long time ago, things used to be better. And what's weird is after talking to a whole bunch of people now, I'm starting to wonder if it was ever really that way, or if there's always been a bunch of jackasses that didn't work hard and didn't like really strive and go for it. And the world itself has been running off of a super small percentage of people that are actually out there kicking ass, like very, very small percent, like 5%. And I was talking to my mom about it because she was saying how, she just can't believe like the work ethic in some people and how they can't find people to work and can't find people to fulfill these like little remedial jobs and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but was there ever really a time when everyone was just totally kicking ass? Or do people that kick ass just draw in other people that are kicking ass? And then when you look at it, you actually realize like, oh, during that time period, it wasn't like the whole world was doing it, but you were surrounded by these people that were doing it alongside you because they had the same mentality that you had. Yeah. And we took it all the way back to like my grandparents had a farm and they had hired hands that would come out on the farm. And I was like, okay, so did grandma and grandpa back in the day, did all their hired hands, were they awesome or did they struggle to find good people? And she's like, oh no, they definitely struggled to find people. And I'm like, and so what was the percentage of the like hard workers, the people that were actually out there kicking ass? And she's like, I think it was probably maybe less than 5%. And I'm like, yeah, but the kind of cool thing that I feel about that is if you realize that the people that are out there actually kicking ass and actually going for it and really chasing their dreams, like if it's this super small percentage, then if you inspire just a couple extra people to go for it with that same tenacity, then that's a big impact. It's not like you have to change the whole world, but if you can grow that like 4 or 5% to like maybe 8%, that would double the amount of awesome hard workers.
That would be great. And like I said, to nobody's discredit, but what I have to give Grandma your credit too is, yeah, you might have found people that weren't going to work, but if you didn't work, where were we going to eat?
Yeah.
Where were you going to get paid? Were you going to get food and shelter and clothing and everything else that you needed for your family? I mean, I vividly remember on many, many occasions going from week to week for the longest I could remember feeding these kids. And it's probably the most heart-wrenching thing because most relationships don't last because of what? Money. Yeah. Money issues or struggles. And when you really talk to people about saying, okay, I got a bill I got to pay on Friday or else I'm fucked. And you don't know what to do. It puts you in a very precarious situation. Do I pay this bill or feed these kids? So that's why I'm saying what gave me a little bit of drive. Yeah, I wanted to do some stuff, but I also wanted to eat. I know what it's like to eat out of the trash. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but when I was on my own for that first little bit of going back down to Florida, $50 didn't last a whole lot, even back in the what was it? Yeah, it was 1985.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go steal? Ain't nobody going to do that. You had to go figure some things out. So I get it. I still think that, the age of entitlement and stuff like that, my grandparents knew what they had to do to get here. They came through Ellis Island. It's like, hey, you want to become a U.S. citizen? Here's a rifle. Go fight on the tail end of World War I. My grandfather fought on the tail end of World War I and was wounded almost tragically in Normandy. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. Neither would any of my parents. My father earned his citizenship the same way, came through Ellis Island. He had a skill set. It's like, hey, sir, what do you do? I'm a freaking mechanic. All right, head back to Naples. You're joining the Navy for a while and you earn your citizenship there. So it wasn't like you were coming in through and all of a sudden you're getting Obama dollars or getting Biden dollars or anything, or any of that sort of handout type stuff. People had to do stuff. Yeah. People had to work. I remember, even vaguely, even though my dad, I didn't know him very well, he's like, hey, when, mother and I got started, we moved to Florida. We did it on a whim. We worked any odd jobs we could until we started getting into real estate and buying and selling real estate and buying and selling, the gas stations and shit like that and made their way. But there was no, turning back once you got started, I think. But yeah, it was the same thing. Back then it was hard to find good work, but we did. We got that percentage of people that wanted to be a part of something special. And I think I could have probably done a lot better, as an employer if my attitude was just different, Who I am today is probably not some of the early times. I remember the very arrogant person that I was back in the day. Maybe even still a little bit, but not much. But I try to humble myself to say, look, I could have probably done things or handled things a little differently. Yeah. But I was young. Where's the rule book? Where's the playbook on raising families, and where's the rule book on really strategic business? There is none. Yeah. If there was, I'd write the damn book because there is no, like a lot of people, well, I go to college. Well, I get that. If you can and you could excel at it and it helps you, but it's not going to guarantee you a position anywhere. You know, so, but that work ethic, that carrying on, like I had told you before, just doing it 1,000% will. Yeah. Doesn't matter what you do. Just be 1,000% at it, man. And people will appreciate it and they'll respect you for it.
And it's cool because I really feel like the people that are the people out there actually kicking ass that will give you breaks do respect that. And like, no matter where you go, you get to see that. Like the people that work hard and that have been driving and going after it, like if you do the same thing, there's like that mutual respect that comes across where you recognize that. You're like, oh, I can tell.
I mean, it's anything, you know that, man. You could be anywhere. I mean, I've had an opportunity to travel almost all over the world. There's a lot I want to see. And I've seen a lot of places. I've been to a lot of different, you know, high-end, low-end places. But when you see somebody just kicking ass, you could see it, dude. And you're like, look at that motherfucker over there. Yeah. He's riding a skateboard and he's owning it. You know, he doesn't got two nickels rubbed together, but it's like, whoever that dude is, he's going someplace in this world. You know, he's who can do that, you know? Or you got a guy making ice creams and he's freaking throwing ice creams in the air and catching them and making freaking cappuccinos and shit. It's like, that dude's owning his position. I got a ton of respect. How could that not gain respect when you see somebody that's really good at what they do? Have you ever, even at a grocery store, you got somebody that's just like doing it and they're like doing it. And it's just like, that's the kind of people I need. If I had 10 of them, I could rule the world. Yeah. No, those
you know, I love matter. Those people. That's like the whole carry the skull thing, man. That's why I ended up doing that, is because those people are like so few and far between. And then like they're these like bright shining stars out there. Diamonds in the rough. Where you're like, oh man, that's so cool that somebody's doing it and killing it. There was one dude that was an airport attendant and he like stuck in my head, and he was somebody that was helping out loading a plane. We're in the airport at like 4:30 in the morning and he's like talking about getting on the plane and he's cracking jokes and he's like, everybody's groggy. Nobody's had like their first cup of coffee, let alone their second cup of coffee or third cup of coffee. And so everybody's like groggy and kind of pissy, and he's sitting there and he like starts out slow and then he keeps like working his way up. And then like pretty soon he has everybody in the whole airport laughing at like 4:30 in the morning.
Love it.
And I'm like, no, wait. I get up to the front and I'm getting on the plane and I got a big old grin on my face, just like everyone else in line. And I ended up that was one of the guys that I ended up giving a doubloon to. I was That's like, cool. All right, man. That's cool. You totally deserve one of these. Like, keep awesome. It up, man. Yeah. Keep kicking ass. But I think that's the thing. I think that if more people realized that if you put everything into what you're doing, like, I think so many people get so frustrated because we live in this fucking instant world where you go to do something and you expect it to turn out right away. And it's like, your first knives were probably okay, but like,
no, dude, they were atrocities. Wait, you'll see upstairs. You'll be like, what?
these are the ones. But it's like, you do it and you like fall on your face. But like, the people that end up being remarkable are the people that just get back up and they keep going and they like try again and they try again and they keep making these like little micro adjustments, and then eventually they get it and then they start like actually doing it, and you're like, oh whoa, that's cool. But then when you start doing it and you put everything you have into it, eventually it gets to a point where you appreciate it. Like you did it with chicken, it sounds like you started working in Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I made the best chicken. I still make the best chicken today. I challenge anyone.
I'm gonna have to.
You're gonna have chicken tonight for dinner. Actually, it's gonna be grilled, but it's gonna be my famous lemon chicken.
Nice. Yeah, I look forward to it. But that's the thing, is like, if you strive to do your best at something, then it turns into something fun. And there's like, that's what life is all about. It's about doing these amazing things and then enjoying your time while you're here. And I don't think very many people realize that. They work these jobs and then they don't put everything they have into it. And it's like, well, why do I hate my job? And it's like, well, you hate your job because you're not fucking trying. You're not putting everything you had into it. Like if you're it's not gonna be where you're at the rest of your life. Yeah. You know, it might not even be there where you're gonna be the next month or even the next week, but do it while you like you say, if you could do it and own it, you're gonna be so happy. Like I said, I've seen people do the most mundane things and it's just like, you know, and I'm kicking my can around freaking, I look at this guy and I'm like, look at this freaking dude over here, man. He's doing this shit and he's freaking like loving it. Like I'm going down the road and I'm thinking I'm having like the worst fucking month in the world. And I see the guy in a freaking, you know, like suit flipping a sign for the furniture store, just freaking jamming it, just getting it, just like owning it. And it's just like, dude, I love you, man, because that just brightened my day because you're owning what you're doing. And it's these small reminders.
And a lot of people say, well, you have these collections, you have this, you got money. It's just like, I get that, man. I get it. It's here now. I can't take it with me. It's going to go to the kids in the next generations, hopefully not the pawn shop. But every now and then I have these collections nowadays that just help me remind. And sometimes I need to go into that library and I need to go and look, and I need to look at that first knife that I have because it humbles me. It brings me back. I'm not going to say that there hasn't been times where I'm like, man, this is great. I'm living good. But I need to sometimes remember where I came from. And to do that, I have these memories up there with the stories and stuff like that. Yes, I collect the guns and the other things. And I like nice stuff too, just like anybody else. But I have these mementos and these memories because it helps me remember. You know, it could cloud your judgment, dude, as long as you could remember your paths and the heartaches that
where you came from.
Yeah, where you came from and everything that you had to do to get there. Don't forget your past. Don't forget your mistakes. Don't forget your gains. Don't forget how you get there. That's important, that you have some kind of memento somewhere. It could be a piece of art, ink, anything is usually a good example, right, of something that just reminds you, hey, man, this is where I started. You know, be humble, be aggressive, you know, but be, you know, own everything that you do, like you say. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And and in your endeavor, I want to help support that because I see it in your eyes, man. You got that fucking eye of the tiger. I know it. I see it in people. That's how I've been able to be successful in this, is I find those diamonds and I see the people that have that freaking drive, and it's just like, I want them to be part of my organization in such a bad way. And I want to collaborate with people that got like that vision, you know, regardless of what it is. And I see that in you, you know, just meeting you for the first time. I could see it all the way through to your bones, man, that you're fucking going to succeed at whatever you do.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Appreciate it. And that's no bullshit. I don't have to blow smoke here, man, because I don't have to. But that's just a little bit of me to you today.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah. It's definitely been a long, crazy journey. I had like I was telling you last night, man, I had a super like troubled past. I think the cool thing about me is the fact that like I don't think most people have gone as far in a shitty direction and then like ended up turning things around and like came back and actually like tried to write their life. And so when I was younger, like I didn't really have a dad there, and I kind of grew up on like, I was drawn to the wrong side of the tracks because I thought it was cool. And so like I, you know, smashing out windows and stealing shit and all that, like it looked like fun to me. And like I didn't have my mom was working all the time. Like she's a good mom, but she was out working her ass off to try and make like no money whatsoever, just so we could have food. And so I was pretty much like left to myself. And then I ended up falling in with like the wrong group of kids because they seemed cool and it was fun. I mean, like going and smashing windows out, like that shit is fun, right? Yeah, and like stealing things is fun. But then when I ended up meeting Kelly, and then she was widowed twice, and I had these like 3 little boys that I'm supposed to raise, and I step into this position where like all of a sudden I'm a dad. Then
like right now, boom,
it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like most people don't do that. Most people have like one kid, and then they have another kid, and they have another kid. I went from like being a single dude to all of a sudden having 3 boys and a wife, and like I have a family now, but I don't have it like the playbook. I didn't have a playbook. I didn't even come close to having a playbook. And so I was trying, like, I wanted to be a good dad. And so I ended up doing it, just approached it from trying to be honest. And, and so in the whole scheme of like trying to be honest, I ended up realizing like my dad, he would try to tell me things, but because he didn't live by those things, I didn't listen to anything that he said when he was there. And then he ended up getting like a restraining order on him when I was super young and got kind of kicked out of my life. But I never respected what he said because it wasn't true. And so then when it came to like raising Kelly's kids, and like these are my kids now and I'm going to raise them, like I knew I had to be honest. And there was so many things that I'd lied about. Like, I mean, I'd gotten high-speed police chases and then filled out false police reports and got away with it. And then like there's all kinds of crazy stuff that I did. But then I ended up, in order to try and be a good dad, I made this huge like my name is Earl sort of list, and I wrote down all the shit that I'd done wrong. And then I went back like over the course of 5 years and tried to like go make amends where I could and try and fix those things. And it was crazy because I got to see like I honestly believe now that like karma is actually a real thing.
It is
100%. And when I was like so fucked up, I was surrounded by a bunch of people that were so fucked up that like all the stuff that was happening in our lives and all the crazy things that were going on, it was just normal. And we're like, oh, that's life. And then when I started like fixing those things, then I started like seeing this whole other side of life and like drawing other people into my life that were never there before. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like this must be what life is like when you're more in integrity. That's right. Things work out better.
Like I was telling you, getting back to the fact of be careful who you let within your circles.
Yeah.
You have to vet carefully. And unfortunately, it happens with family too. I know a lot of people are like, man, family is family, man. It's blood's thicker than water. But yeah, really? You know, I have some family members that would cook and eat us both. You know, they really would. You know, but it's unfortunate it's that way. But, you know, it's good that you've been able to recognize. But like you say, you know, just letting, you know, you got a beautiful thing, a totally change of direction for you. Yeah. But then it's just a matter of, I mean, they often say you are what you eat. You know, you are what's within your soul and the people you surround yourself with. It's been the best thing I've ever done. And it's been the most hard thing to do too, is because there's some people that I just thought that were needed to be part of my life. And just like, oh my God, I've had to learn over the course of a really hard life that they never really were. You know, and on some of the senses of family too, you know, which is heartbreaking, the worst, I think, out of anybody that you meet. But it sounds like you've made your way, you know, and that's good. God bless you, man.
Yeah. No, it's kind of crazy. So one of the stories I got to tell you that like I saved just for the podcast because like it was super cool. It was like I got a whole, like we could talk forever about like the different things that I did that were like messed up, and then like the whole going back and taking care of it. So the thing that ended up turning me on to your knives in the first place was this guy in Montana ended up getting like one of your first batch of Halo knives, right?
Nice.
And so they were like ones, and they had like mirror polish blades on them. They were like super, super nice. You push the button, it goes in and out. And so I love knives, and I would always go into a store and like check stuff out. I'd save up money and like buy knives occasionally. And I walk into the store and I'm like, so looking at knives, and he's like, oh, I got to show you something. He's like, check this out. And he pulls out one of your knives, and it's like one of the original Halo knives. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. Like that thing's so badass. And I push the button and like the blade comes out, and I was like, oh, that's so awesome. And then I like push it and like retract it and like send it back in there. And I'm like, whoa, that was super cool. And I'm like, I'm going to buy it. And he's like, it's $600. And I'm like, I'm going to save up my money and I'm going to buy that knife. Yeah. And he's like, I can't sell it to you. And I'm like, you can't sell it to me. And he's like, yeah, you have to be like military or law enforcement in order to buy that knife.
Back in the day, there was some kind of like kooky like rules to do that sort of thing. Yeah,
totally. And so I ended up going, and I was like, okay. And so me and my mentality back then, which was just like super skewed and totally off perspective, I was like, okay, well, the only way I'm going to get this knife is if I break in there and steal it. And so I planned it out for like 6 months, and I waited. So there's like enough time where like nobody's going to catch me. And then I end up going there, and it's wintertime by now, right? And so I wear these big shoes because there's like snow on the ground, and sneak up to there in the middle of the night.
Why didn't you just wear like Sasquatch too? They would have thought like a Sasquatch.
Bigfoot.
Okay, got fucking Bigfoot came in the building.
And then ended up, I had like 2 rocks, man. Ended up like smashing out the one window, go inside, smash the glass case. The glass case was like super strong, so I had to hit it twice, and like all the knives end up in this pile down at the bottom. I have to like sort through.
My God.
And I find the one and take off out of there, go run. My buddy was driving the getaway truck. I like jump in there and then take off down the road. He's like, I can't believe you did it. I was like, fuck yeah, I did it. I was like, that was the only way I could get it. And he's like, man, you're crazy. And
oh my goodness.
So I ended up having it, and then I think I had a stepdad that like hated that knife because like for some reason he just didn't like knives, and I'm pretty sure he ended up taking it, but I had it for a really long time. And then when I ended up making my list, that ended up being one of the things on my list of the stuff that like I needed to go take care of. And I'd already gone, when I made my list, I started taking care of like the biggest things first. And then I figured it would be easier to take care of the smaller ones, which wasn't really true. Like some of the smaller ones were still really hard to take care of. But when I ended up going back in to take care of it, it was crazy because the day that I went in there, the dude was at a different shop. And so like I drove to the shop, and which is really hard. Like if you're ever going to like try and like write something that was messed up, then it's super, super hard to do because your brain like yells at you. It's like, don't do it. But there's like a little part inside where like, you know, that that's the right thing to do. Yeah. And so I was like, no, it's right. Like I got to do this. And I walk into the store, and I go in there and I look at the dude, and he's like, I remember you. And I was like, yeah. He's like, haven't seen you in a long time. And I'm like, yeah, no. And he's like, what can I help you with? And I was like, oh, well, like 15 years ago, I ended up coming to your store, and I broke in the middle of the night, and I stole a knife. And I was like, I wanted to come back in and make things right. And he looks at me and he's like, that was you? And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, how'd you get away so fast? And I was like, well, I just wanted the one knife. And I was like, I actually would have saved up my money and bought it, but like you told me I couldn't buy it. You told me there's no way to get it. That was the only way that I could get it. And he's like, oh man, that's crazy. He's just like, why are you coming back in now and like trying to take care of this? And I was like, well, I ended up marrying this woman, and she's super awesome, and she's got these amazing kids, and like I'm trying to be a good dad, and I want to raise them with integrity where like they look at me and they believe in what I say. And I know if I'm not honest, then I'm never going to be able to achieve that. And so I'm trying to take care of the things that I did in the past that were wrong when I can. And stealing this knife from you was on the list. And I was like, so I'm down to do whatever you want. Like if you want to call the cops and like get them to come down here and arrest me, I was like, I deserve it. Like I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, if you want me to do work for you, if you want me to like pay it back, I was like, whatever you want to do, like I'm down to do that. And he's like, he's like, you know, people steal from me all the time. He's like, nobody ever comes back in and like tells me that they stole something or try and make it right. And he's like, actually what you did was probably like one of the biggest things that I ever had happen, because nobody really like breaks in and like steals stuff in the middle of the night. And he's like, but he's like, the way I see it, you like, in order to help me out, he's like, I want you to tell more people to come shop at my store. And I was like, that's what you want me to do? Like, that's it? I'm like, I have this other knife. Like, do you want this? And he's like, no. He's like, I just think you're doing a really good thing. He's like, just keep it up, man. Like, just keep up what you're doing. You're doing a really good thing. But yeah, it was crazy because, yeah, that was the very first Microtech knife that I've ever seen. And all the ones that I've gotten since then, I bought with my money.
Awesome. We appreciate the support, man. That's awesome. That's cool. That's a neat story. It's a neat story. Tells a lot about your character. I like that. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it definitely, like, I feel like no matter where you're at, like, you can always switch things up. You can always change things. And there's definitely, like, skewed perspectives, too. Like, this perspective that I had when I was younger, like, it seemed real at the time because of the people that I was surrounded with. But I think, like, when you start going after what you honestly want, like, inside yourself, and, like, you pursue it with tenacity, then you end up realizing that, like, the world's a different place than you thought it was, and like doors open up that you never would have seen before. And you're like, whoa, this is crazy. Then I started tattooing shortly after that, and then that was like 10 years ago.
That's neat. Yeah. Well, I look forward to getting some ink done in the future. So
I'm looking forward to it, man.
Cool. All right, man. Cheers.
Yeah. So overall, if the one thing, the question that I have for you, like, especially seeing as like what we're going into, I'm going to have a whole bunch of employees. You went from this step where you're just by yourself, and then you started running your own company. It sounds like you made a bunch of mistakes, like with handling people and doing things.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to actually running your own business and managing a bunch of people, like, what's the best advice like you could give me, knowing that like I'm going to have a bunch of people that I'm be trying to take care of here.
The biggest thing from a business perspective, I'd say for anybody nowadays, is just, you know, being consistent with your protocols and procedures. Okay. You know, having expectations from your employees, or especially anybody in general, is always good. what I've learned over the course of time, absolutely start out with getting yourself, your best new hire should be an HR person.
Okay.
Your HR person is going to keep you out of trouble. They're going to keep you up to speed on regulations, codes, everything else. That's going to be your insulator. I should have worked on that so far along. I've had some bad I won't mention names, some really bad HR people.
Okay.
Got a really great one now, but an HR person, because you can't be that person to everyone. You can't be the friends. You can't be like the best friend of everybody out on the shop floor either. But, identifying their expectations and what you expect up front. If you expect people to work Saturdays, you better fucking say it when you hire them.
Okay.
When I hire people on, I put the fear of God. It's like, hey, we work nights and weekends, and even though we don't do all that all the time, and if you can get them, just to let them know, that just to see if they're going to be able to be on board. But just identifying their expectations, what you expect out of them. I think I treat our people really, really good. Our people are the heart of our company. Without it, what am I? I'm back to the garage making knives, which would not be a bad thing. But to continue the legacy forward, we need to have people to run this organization. But I'm going to say, if you have a strategic plan going forward, having a couple, if you're going to have anybody in a level of management, I'm going to say HR is going to be your key, because that's the person that's going to handle your payroll. It's going to handle your issues. It's going to handle that insulation. You need to be that guy walking in and shaking hands and kissing babies, saying, "Hey, man, you're doing a great job," or whatever else. You can't be that one. If you do have to have that, talk or whatever, you have it with your HR department.
Okay.
A lot of early on, man. Hey, well, Tony said this. Tony said that. Tony said this. Tony yelled at me. Or Tony did that, or Tony does this. Now it's just like, hey, man, if I need to make corrections, just like on this last trip I made to Bradford, it needed to be done. And I love my people up there, but I took my two people. I took one of my inspectors, and I took my HR person, because if I needed to do something on the spot, it's not go on that trip. Well, Tony said this, Tony said that, and then I'm going to relate it back to base to take action. I brought my HR lady with me. So I'm going to say, if you're planning on expanding your business to any side, having somebody on the HR thing is going to really save you a lot of grief. Okay. Because I'll tell you what, I've been sued, I've been accused, I've done this, I've done that, whatever. HR is the one that's going to be that insulator. It's the cheapest insulator you have for insurance for your business, to secure what you're doing, from the aspect of employees. That's really, as far as that's concerned, just regulations in general vary from state to state, but just having somebody on the HR side that could help, even from a smaller level, that could grow with your company, it's an important position. Yeah. There's other aspects, like saying, hey, as you grow, making sure that your finances are in order, and making sure that you know where your money is at any given time, to see, how you're operating and stuff like that. And then, again, being connected with your employees to say, hey, look, you're doing well. Doing timely reviews is very important. A review doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a raise. An employee just wants to know sometimes, how am I doing? Yeah. How's my performance? And having an HR buffer to be able to do that, to be able to consult with you and, or Kelly, to say, hey, how's this person doing? A lot of times having that buffer, that insulator, if I could have had a great HR department early on, it could have probably saved us a lot of time and aggravation.
Really?
Yeah. I can't think of any other position. You're the driver, you're the visionary. Yeah. But you got to have that cooler, in between you and your employees.
So when did you finally get an HR person?
I finally, we've had HR people throughout the years. Okay. But when did I finally get the HR person? Yeah. Just not too long ago, and that's Melinda Gennaro, and she's probably the best find. We've had a lot of great additions to Microtech over the last 12 to 18 months, but she is definitely one of them. Nice. So we've been extremely fortunate. And then when you get that great HR person, they're recruiting all these other great people. They're doing all the vetting. They're doing all the everything and covering your ass in such a way. It's been a really good synergy. So, nice. I know I always bounce back to her, but she really kind of keeps me out of trouble. Yeah. Yeah. So just think about that. Yeah,
I will. Yeah, because that's when I
You need to be focusing on the vision of the company moving forward. You have to be this way. You need to have somebody, that can help you manage that group of individuals. You have to be looking, like I told my people just this last week, I'm not thinking about today. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about fucking 5 years from now. I'm not thinking about today. I'm thinking about the next move, because I said everybody in this industry has their eyes on us, whether it be, people overseas or people here domestically. There's competitors.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at the next move to make sure that we're strategically ahead of everybody else. That's your vision as a business entrepreneur. You need to be thinking about your next move. You can't be thinking about whether or not, you got this person over here that's freaking not coming in on time. Hey, if you say you need to be here on 8, it doesn't mean 8:08, doesn't mean 8:30, doesn't mean 9:30. It means fucking 8 o'clock.
Totally.
And people can't be going, well, Jake said I could, or I'm just going to go around and talk to you and get an. No, you go to HR, man. Go to HR. Insulate yourself slightly.
I like that.
Yeah.
When it's cool, like I feel like
when you walk in, people's asses should be. I mean, people should just be either super. You should be the rock star of your factory, or wherever you're working. It can't be. Well, you can't be the heavy all the time. You can when you need to be, but you need to be that beacon, like I told you, man.
Yeah.
They want to be like you. They want to follow you, literally. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So did you always have that vision, man? Was it always like, it's when you were doing it, was it always 5 years out?
I've always thought ahead as far as I can. I mean, now with the size of our organization and everything else, projecting ourselves that far, it takes a lot of elbow grease. It takes a lot of discipline, because there once was a time. I mean, there's a lot of great designers out there. I mean, these guys can come up with shit, could think of shit like a week. They could do an award-winning piece every week if they wanted to. But the thing about it is that do we want to self-compete amongst ourselves? I mean, for me as a designer and for me as an entrepreneur, I mean, I could come up with a new design each week, but what about the last designs that were really, breadwinners? So you got to be careful, in my industry, on not being able to put too much technology out there all at once, or maybe advanced technology that nobody understands. So, I mean, you got to be innovative to win, but you don't come out with the innovative piece next week and then next week come out with another innovative piece. Then before you know it, you got 50 innovative pieces that are colliding within each other. Yeah. So we're very strategic on how we do it. But thinking ahead, I could tell you, I used to tell people, like even the banks and stuff like that, we're not bank owned or nothing like that. But business plans, you could strategically plan. But dude, my crystal ball, man, my batteries are a little fuzzy these days. It's hard to really think beyond that, like, let's say 2-year mark.
Okay.
Strategically. But my vision could see far. So, your strategic vision and then what you could actually really back up. I mean, in today's changing economy, politics, world affairs, everything else, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but you got to stay focused. But having that vision to say, look, this is kind of where I want to be, in let's say a 2 to 3 year period, on a smaller business is not impossible. As you could see, the time's funneling. Yeah. It seems like, Jesus, this year's already gone. It freaks me out. It makes my stomach turn because it's like already now, it's going to be Blade Show here shortly. It's going to be Christmas. My little baby daughter's going to be 2. I'm going to be, 50 something. But you get what I'm saying. So just having a little bit of strategy to say, hey, this is our targets and our objectives or where we'd like to be is not unhealthy. If you can create a roadmap for your business or create a roadmap for your company, you deviate, you fall off course, whatever else. But if you have somewhat of a roadmap that you could follow, it's not a bad idea, to strategically plan and vision. Would I have ever figured I would have been to this point in my life? Unlikely when I first got started. Well, I was just hoping to make sure that I could feed my kids, at the time. And, going from that week to week, then month to month. It's taken over the course of years. Microtech, like I said, was founded in, 1991, and we incorporated kind of around, we incorporated in 94, and here we are still doing it with, some traction from a global standpoint. I would have never have figured I would have gone this far. But now we have the ability, and that's, what I love about the people that I have is they put me in a much better position to focus my energy on seeing much more forward. And, that gives them a peace of mind because there's nothing guaranteed, dude. Who would have thunk that we were going to have this freaking COVID stuff and all this other stuff happen? Shit happens. But you got to be able to, prepare to a certain extent. But yeah, some strategic long-range planning, that's where you need to be. And as long as you could surround people that you can delegate the task down, that's what it's all about. You're delegating work down to people, amongst your staff to be able to get this done, whether it be artists or anybody else. And they follow up and report, and you hold them accountable. Be consistent, brother. That's all I say. Be consistent in your word. Be consistent in your demeanor. And there's nobody in that organization that's going to get you upset. It's going to be you. If you can't work, you find that person, it's like, oh my God, I love to work with them, but I hate them. Then you got to make some other things. There should be some level of harmony, but you can't be going having beers with all your pals that are your employees either, because that never works. You could ask a lot of my managers that have had to separate that just a little bit. And that's where it becomes a little bit challenging, because being at the top, bro, I will say it's alone. It's alone the majority of your life. And you'll find out, because you're going to be successful. You'll see. You got a good woman, good family, everything else. That's your core.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, I got people that I can have within my circle, which are very far and in between. But the rest of it, I love everybody within our organization. I fight. That's why they back me up, because they know when I go to battle, company comes up and pokes us in the gut, they get a roundhouse in the face. That's just how it is. But I fight for each and every one of the people that work for us, whether they don't fight for themselves. I do it. But that's really the only advice I could really give you at this point is
that's pretty great advice, man.
That was super good. Well, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Nice.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, man.
And I look forward to having you down again as a guest and doing more stuff. I look forward to working with you and seeing where you go with your vision. But
thanks. I look forward to having you up to Montana.
I would love to get out to Montana. It's beautiful out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for attending our podcast. We look forward to having a good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thanks. Take care. Bye.